Madam President, I rise in strong opposition to House Bill 5043, an act concerning convertible pistols, etc. For the record, it is 3:46 a.m. And I'll just state for the record that I would have much preferred to be having this debate during the daylight hours when I was a little bit more coherent and capable, because I'm extremely passionate about this topic, and I feel compelled to make the best and strongest case that I can during this debate. This bill that is before us is more troubling than simply just another bad firearms bill. It represents, in many respects, an extreme arrogance of a political majority in Connecticut that has become openly hostile to private gun ownership, to lawful gun owners, to gun stores, to manufacturers, and frankly, as was pointed out by my colleague, Senator Kissel, who spoke very eloquently, to the Second Amendment itself. And in my view, this should not happen in America. Private gun ownership is not some sort of fringe idea. It is part of our national heritage. It is part of our constitutional structure. It is part of the American understanding of citizenship, self-defense, individual responsibility, and resistance to government overreach. And Senator Kissel was right. America is a different place from every other country on earth, and in many respects, it is simply because of the right to bear arms. We are a different breed of people in America. We are citizens. We are not subjects. We have the rights of kings and queens to defend ourselves, to own property, to be able to stand in defense of our own selves and our property. And that, my friends and neighbors, is what is at stake here. The Second Amendment is not a suggestion. It's not a courtesy. It's not a permission slip issued by the Connecticut General Assembly. It's part of the Constitution of the United States of America. And our national constitutional rights and policies still matter, even if the Connecticut Democrats wish they did not. And as Senator Kissel mentioned, the majority comes back year after year after year after year with more and more ways to infringe on this important right, with another anti-freedom bill, another proposal aimed not at criminals, but at law-abiding citizens who already follow the law. We've seen magazine bans. We've seen so-called assault weapon bans. We've seen attacks on carry rights. We have seen lawsuits aimed at lawful firearm businesses just last year. We've seen bill after bill designed to make law-abiding gun ownership more complicated, more expensive, and less available to ordinary people. And now, having already gone so far down the road of banning different things and coming up with new impediments to the law, the majority is running out of normal things to ban. So the bills are becoming stranger, more technical, more confusing, and frankly, weirder. And we will get into just how weird this bill is in a few minutes. We are now debating whether a common handgun, and I'm using very specific language here, may be banned from future commercial sale because of an internal part of this firearm that most people cannot identify, that many experts can't confidently define, and that no one seems prepared to list firearm by firearm. That is not serious public safety policy. It's not serious policy at all. And this is what happens when politics is driving the lawmaking process and not public service or policy making. I want to just make an important point, which is that there are some people on the other side of this issue who are adamant that we need this policy and other types of gun control. And I respect their right to their views. But there is a big difference between being on my side of the issue and their side of the issue. Because to be on my side of the issue does not infringe on their rights at all. If they don't want to exercise their right to keep and bear arms, they don't have to. If they don't want to buy a specific type of firearm, they don't have to. But when they win the argument and they set the policy, they deprive other Americans of their rights. This bill takes choices and freedom away from other people. It takes choices away from law-abiding citizens, people who simply want to maintain their rights. It takes choices away from gun stores to operate legally. It takes away from people who just want to be able to protect and defend their families. That freedom means you can decline to exercise a right, but it should not mean that you get the right to take a right away from someone else. I want to also point out that I believe this bill fails several constitutional tests, and I believe it should be overturned on those grounds if it ever makes it before a court willing to apply the Constitution faithfully and fairly. I've got a lot to say today, but I got 5 major points that I want to cover. And the first one is something I talk about a lot of times in here, and that is that this bill is vague and unenforceable. And sometimes I'm using that a little liberally, but not today. This bill is like textbook void for vagueness. And it's vague and cloudy and unclear to an extreme. And I promise we will get into that in some detail. Second, this bill is overtly political. It's going to have no meaningful impact on crime or prevent criminals from engaging in any activity whatsoever. As I mentioned, it fails several constitutional tests. First and foremost, it fails the constitutional protection recognized in the Heller decision, District of Columbia versus Heller, which basically states very simply that firearms that are in common use cannot be banned. It also fails the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision, which is recent, just from 2022, which basically says that in order for a government in America, a state government or the federal government, to begin banning different types of firearms, they need to find a historical parallel. They've got to be able to show that some similar policy was enacted early on in our country to show that it is legitimately within the confines of the Second Amendment. And finally, this bill reflects a broad pattern of very bad policy in Connecticut, written by people who know very little, and I'm being kind, about firearms themselves, who distrust lawful gun owners, and frankly prefer symbolic politics over policy that would solve any problems. So let's talk about what this bill actually does. It's not a long bill, and there are a few different pieces to it, but I'm going to focus all of my energy today on the first 2 sections of the bill, which is not even 70 lines. This bill creates a new category called a convertible pistol. And no, it doesn't mean you can put the top down. It sounds technical, but this is what I'm assuming it means from the description in the bill. We are talking about a semi-automatic firearm, a handgun in particular, and semi-automatic means that with every squeeze of the trigger, one round is discharged, versus a gun that would require a bolt action, for example, where you'd have to manually go through a process to fire each round, or a fully automatic firearm where if you held the trigger depressed, it would continue to fire round after round. So we're talking about semi-automatic handguns with a particular internal trigger component that the folks that have testified in favor of this bill, the proponents of this bill, claim can be altered or used with a separate legal conversion device, thus the term convertible. So in lines 21 through 33, it says, a convertible pistol, in quotes, means any semi-automatic pistol with a cruciform trigger bar that can be readily altered by hand or with a common household tool. The idea being that this series of words would allow someone acting nefariously to turn a regular semi-automatic handgun into a machine gun. Those are their words. But I want to be very, very clear about what we're talking about. I want to slow down and back up just a little bit. We are not talking about a firearm that is illegal. We're not even talking about a firearm that is modified. We are not talking about a fully automatic firearm. We are not even talking about a firearm that has such a conversion device installed in it. This is a firearm that may someday be modified by someone acting already illegally. It's several levels of absurdity and stupidity to get to the finish line on this bill. And because of that theoretical possibility that could happen, this bill will ban the lawful commercial sale of a whole series of firearms, which I'm hoping when we get to the point of a little Q&A that we'll be able to define. But at this point, I don't believe we have an answer to which firearms are accurately included and which are not. This creates a system where a firearm may be legal to possess, but illegally to sell. It may be legal to transfer privately, but impossible to transfer because in Connecticut, there's no such thing as a private sale that does not involve a federal licensed firearm dealer, an FFL. So these are a series of questions that I will have going forward. So this is not, in my view, coherent policy. This is a series of traps to catch law-abiding citizens. And we are not regulating conduct. We are regulating the internal mechanical design and pretending that that is going to stop criminals. This bill says, in effect, that because someone could illegally modify a lawful product, the lawful product itself should be restricted. But that is not how free societies work. I made this point in the Judiciary Committee when I testified, which is that sawed-off shotguns are illegal. But no one suggests that we should stop selling shotguns because they could be sawed off, which I would argue would be a far simpler modification to a firearm than the one suggested in this bill. But that's exactly what's happening here. If we start judging products by what some nefarious person might do with that product to make it dangerous, where does it end? If someone modifies a car illegally, do we ban the car? If someone alters a prescription medication illegally, do we ban medicine? If someone misuses bleach or a common cleaning product, do we ban it? If someone uses a hammer or a knife or anything, any kind of tool as a weapon, do we ban or do we sue the manufacturer? No. We punish the wrongdoer, the person responsible. In my view, that is the difference between criminal justice, which is what we should be focused upon, and scapegoating law-abiding citizens. So if the standard is someone can misuse it, where does it end? I have a few questions, Madam President.
Please proceed.
At some point, I'm going to ask some specific questions about which firearms we're referring to, but for now, I'm going to assume that we are going to just use the definition of a convertible pistol. Are convertible pistols in their ordinary unmodified condition illegal?
Thank you, Senator Winfield. Do we need a microphone?
Minor detail.
Thank you, Madam President. Just before I answer, I just want clarification. I guess the question is about how we function currently. A little clarification on the question. Sorry, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. That is a very good question, but I will accept either answer. Under current law, or if this bill becomes law, is the firearm described as a convertible pistol illegal in its unmodified, ordinary condition?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. And I was just trying to make sure I answer the question, not trying to avoid it. I think the answer is that the implement is legal currently and would still be legal. One could own it, one could possess it. So in that sense, it would still be legal for one to have, through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer. So we're not actually suggesting that the firearm itself is illegal, except that I do understand there is a caveat that if this bill passes, there will be restrictions upon its sale.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I would agree with the way in which Senator, it's late, Sampson, sorry, Senator Sampson phrased it.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. Is it already illegal in Connecticut to possess a machine gun? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I do not believe that you normally can possess a machine gun, and it's not a legal thing. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. So machine guns are actually lawful in the state of Connecticut as long as you've gone through the proper process and have gotten approval through the ATF and you have a proper firearm licensing through the federal government. Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. That is what I was referring to. Yes, that is correct, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. But is it already illegal to convert a semi-automatic firearm into a machine gun? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, that would mean that you would be in possession of a machine gun without having properly gone through the process, which would mean that you were in possession of a firearm, in this case a machine gun, that you are not legally capable of. So I would say the answer to that is it would not be legal.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. And that's the way I understand the law as well. And I want to apologize to anyone who's upset with me using the term machine gun when we mean fully automatic. But for the sake of this argument, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Is it already illegal to possess a conversion device like the one described in the bill through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, I'm trying to remember all of the things that we've done. I don't believe that one can have. I'd have to check, Madam President, to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I am confident that the conversion device that is described in this bill is already illegal because the federal government considers that itself to be a machine gun. So, considering the fact that all of these things are already illegal, the possession of the converter device, the tampering with a semi-automatic firearm to make it a fully automatic firearm, and the possession of the ultimate product, which would be a fully automatic firearm without the blessing and proper paperwork from the federal government, since all those things are actually already illegal, what new criminal conduct does this bill actually prevent?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I would say in answering this that I am going based off of what I have heard from the testimony and the folks who have come before us to put forward what is now before us as legislation that potentially becomes the law, that I think what is imagined here as the difference is that in a sense, we are clarifying that all of these actions in conjunction are illegal. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
And thank you very much, Madam President. Let's talk about some of the other language that is in this very first sentence that starts to talk about convertible pistols. Remember, convertible pistol means any semi-automatic pistol with a cruciform trigger bar, which I promise to get back to, that can be readily altered by hand or with a common household tool. So readily altered. Can I just ask what readily altered means in the context of this bill? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe that what is being gotten at there is that the alteration can be done without a high level of sophisticated knowledge, without sophisticated machining that might happen. In a sense, it would be that the individual attempting to make the alteration could do it with not completely easy, but relative ease to do. Do you, Madam President?
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
So just thinking out loud here, my reaction to that would be readily altered by whom? By a child or by a gunsmith? By a hobbyist, a machinist who's on his lunch break, a criminal who has tools and intent, a person that has access to a YouTube video that shows them how to do it, a person with a 3D printer? Or would it have to be someone who has a specialized knowledge of firearms? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you. Well, in response to the question before this question, I think my suggestion would indicate that, in fact, it could potentially, because any one of those folks could actually be any of the other folks, could potentially be any of those folks. But again, I think it has to do with the level of knowledge / ingenuity that would be required. And so whether you are someone with deep knowledge or someone with criminal intent or even a child who might have some knowledge. I think it has to do with how, I don't want to say simple because I don't think it's overly simple. I don't think everyone around the circle would be able to do it. But with the relative ease with which one might be able to do it through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I will not take the bait to make any assertions about the capability of any of my colleagues on the mechanical skill required. Let me just say that my concern, and the reason why I asked this question the way I did, is because when you use a term like readily altered in a bill, you're creating a vague, an expansive term that can be interpreted many, many different ways, ultimately in a courtroom, no doubt. And in my view, when you set up something like that, and there's no clear definition surrounding what readily altered actually means, you're creating something that means anything to anyone. It has no fixed meaning, in other words. Does the bill define the amount of time is required when they say readily altered?
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. And through you, it does not.
Thank you, Senator
Is there
Sampson.
any requirement that the modification be permanent, or could it be reversible?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, in the bill where it speaks to the issue that Senator Sampson has brought before the chamber, it does not speak to that in detail. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Does the bill define who would actually decide what readily available or readily alterable, forgive me, means?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Through you, Madam President, no, it does not.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So this is just one of the parts of the language that I find objectionable, because I do think that this bill is set up in a way to create numerous traps for people to fall into. And when you have something as vague as saying readily altered, I really do think it matters who you're talking about, because I think a trained gunsmith might be able to readily alter a firearm a lot more than someone that is not equipped with the proper equipment or has the knowledge to do so. And I also note that there is language in there that says common household tools, but it says to include but not limited to, which means that any tools. Again, another vague term. It does say knife, screwdriver, wrench, hacksaw, crowbar, electric drill, rotary tool, hammer, chisel, file, or pliers. But the phrase including but not limited to is problematic. I mean, does it include a Dremel, a soldering iron, a vise, a bench grinder? I mean, other tools that might be household tools in somebody's house, but maybe not in somebody else's. And again, readily altered by hand or with a common household tool. Let's talk about cruciform trigger bar. This is defined in the bill as a component in a semi-automatic pistol that serves as a linkage between the trigger and firing pin and has its sear incorporated in a cross-shaped surface. Is that really enough description? Can the proponent of the bill describe this part through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, if I were asked to describe the part based on the knowledge I have, and while I have handled guns, I'm not a person who's dealt with the internal mechanism of the gun. I probably would have given something similar to that as the description. So if the questioner believes that it's not, I'd be happy to answer whatever other question he has in addition, but that would have likely been close to my answer to the question.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The reason why I asked this question is because I actually visited a local gun store and I spoke with the owner of this gun store, who is an extremely knowledgeable guy, who also noted to me that he had never sold more Glock handguns than in the few short days after this bill passed the House of Representatives. So I want to congratulate the Connecticut Democrats on selling a great many Glock handguns through their marketing efforts on this bill. But he could not tell me what this part was. We went and looked at all of the manuals for the various generation Glock handguns, and we looked at the schematics where all the parts are laid out, and he and I talked about, well, is that it? Or maybe that's it? But nowhere in any of these schematics is any part labeled by the manufacturer as a cruciform trigger bar. And I venture to guess that if I start asking my colleagues who are supporting this bill to show me one or to draw me one, that they couldn't do it. And if that's the case, because let me explain, this bill hinges on the fact that it applies to firearms, convertible pistols, that contain this part. Is this part exactly the same in each convertible pistol through you, Madam President?
Senator Winfield.
Madam President, the answer to that would be no.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Does the bill define the dimensions, the geometry, the tolerances, the anything else that might identify this part to be the cruciform trigger bar through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
No, Madam President. What the bill does in making attempt to define it is what Senator Sampson laid out, talking about what the connection, the linkage that it makes internally, but it does not give exact dimensions. It doesn't identify in that way. No, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Right. Could two nearly identical firearms be treated differently because they simply have different trigger parts, where one of them is deemed to have a cruciform trigger bar? And if that's the case, because I suspect the answer is yes based on the definition of the bill, who would be able to tell me which firearms contain such a part through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I suppose two firearms could be treated differently given a scenario put forward. Madam President, I suppose that in order to answer the question about who could tell, it would have to be someone with some experience with a firearm to understand the description in the definition and which parts would make that linkage through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm just trying to think, because this is such an important thing. Is the cruciform trigger bar illegal by itself through you?
Senator Winfield.
Madam President, I don't believe that the cruciform trigger bar itself is illegal by itself. No, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. I'm
really concerned about this particular definition. It's because when I visited my friend, who, trust me when I tell you, is an absolute expert about firearms. This is a guy who can tell you almost every firearm ever created throughout all of mankind's history. He's touched almost every kind of firearm and can tell you the internal workings and the type of mechanism. And this gentleman said, I can't for sure, for absolute certain, tell you what firearms include this part, whether this part is contained in certain types of firearms by brand or by model or by version. So if he can't do that, how is the average person supposed to know? How is a police officer in the field supposed to know? How about a prosecutor or a judge? How are any of those folks supposed to determine which firearms have a cruciform trigger bar?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. What I can say to the good senator is that there is a description in the bill, and the police officer, should they have the knowledge, would be able to do it. And if they didn't have the knowledge, they would not be able to do that, through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just to read one more time, cruciform trigger bar means a component in a semi-automatic pistol that serves as a linkage between the trigger and firing pin, as it has its sear incorporated in a cross-shaped surface. I assume this part is not visible from the outside of the firearm. Is that correct through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. That would be correct.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Does every striker-fired pistol have a cruciform trigger bar through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, no.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
What about the different generations of Glock pistols? Do they all contain a cruciform trigger bar through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Madam President, I don't know all of it. I don't have the answer to that.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I will note that nowhere in the bill is the term the manufacturer Glock mentioned. However, this bill has been widely reported as a ban on Glock handguns because they are allegedly the most likely and capably converted using an already illegal converter device. And that's the purpose of the legislation that is before us. I've alluded to a number of things along the way that I want to get into more detail, but I'll just pause right here to just suggest that while I appreciate the good chairman and his answers, I don't think they are adequate from a standpoint of making a determination that could be relied upon in a courtroom or on the side of the road, or if you were in custody for possession of a certain firearm, because I don't expect that a police officer is going to, first off, dismantle a firearm to determine whether or not it contains this part, or determine with any certainty that it is a firearm that contains a cruciform trigger bar. And I believe that you could end up in a situation where you might even have people that are experts on the subject who disagree based on this definition. So it's somewhat concerning to me that we are creating policy that creates a criminal exposure, I believe it's a Class D felony, based on a technical phrase that is not sufficiently tied to a clear list, a standard, a diagram, a certification process, or anything. It's just a term of art. And the description in the bill is subjective at best, as is the term readily altered, as is the term common household tool. I mean, what counts as common? If you can buy it at Home Depot, is it common? Is a drill press common? Let's talk about the next issue I had. That was all focused on my concern over the vague language of the bill. But the next point I mentioned early on is the Heller decision. So periodically, these types of gun control bills make it all the way to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States. And periodically, they take up these types of laws and they are either struck down or they are allowed to stand as law based on their comparison, the check and balance in our system that determines whether they meet constitutional muster. Well, the decision that occurred back in 2008, District of Columbia versus Heller, is now held as the standard for what types of gun control laws are allowed to be passed in Congress or by the states. And they set up several different tests to determine whether or not a gun control or gun ban policy like the one before us passes that muster. And in my view, this fails the more obvious requirements that are in the Heller decision. In that court case, the court held that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess firearms for lawful purposes, including self-defense in the home, and it struck down the Washington, D.C. handgun ban and its requirement that firearms in the home be kept non-functional even when needed for self-defense. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that case is directly linked to this bill based on two things. One, that this bill specifically targets handguns. And the Heller decision specifically protected the right of American citizens to own and possess handguns. Second, it made it extremely clear that items that are in what they refer to as the common use are protected. You cannot ban common use items. Obscure, one-off, altered firearms, maybe, but items that are in common use, absolutely not. And I already mentioned that this bill does not mention the brand Glock, but this bill and its language is designed specifically, though it may capture other firearms, and we will get to that, it is designed specifically to go after at least several generations of Glock handguns. And what, frankly, is more common than a Glock handgun as far as firearms go? I read somewhere just this morning when I was thinking this bill might come up today for debate that 65% of law enforcement officers in the entire country carry a Glock handgun. There is zero argument that this is not common. I don't know what the threshold for common is, but I think when you're starting to talk about a majority of police officers and millions of units sold in our country, I think you get to common pretty quickly. So the question about whether or not this particular bill would survive Heller is pretty obvious to me, that it is a handgun possessed by private citizens primarily for self-defense, and it is in common use. Those are the exact things that suggest that the Heller decision would strike down this particular proposal. I could ask some questions about it. I don't know, is the good chairman up for some questions about Heller? Would he agree that the Heller decision protects the right of law-abiding citizens to possess firearms that are in the common use? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you, Madam President, the Heller decision to this point has not been succeeded by a decision, so it still pertains in this moment, and I would largely agree with what the good senator said. I would just say this, because I think we'll get to it, and if we wouldn't have, well, too bad on me, because I opened the door. But Madam President, while I hear what the senator is saying, I would remind us all that those who are in possession of these guns would still be able to have these guns. They wouldn't be able to sell them or offer them or certain things under the bill, but they would still be able to have their access to these guns. And so I don't know that I would agree that we are banning them in a sense that I think most of us think of banning these implements.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. That's a fair response, and it is duly noted. But just one more thing on that Heller question. I would just ask, just for the opinion of the chairman, and just so we have it on the record, would he agree that Glock-style pistols are indeed in the common use? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, though I would note that I'm not sure that, yes in general, but I would note that the point made earlier that the usage by police, I don't think goes towards whether or not it's common usage, because as we know, police have access at times to implements that the common citizen doesn't. But in this case, when we talk about Glock is a preferred and therefore implement that is in the common use.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that. And certainly I used the law enforcement example simply just to point out that there are lots and lots of Glock pistols in existence. They've sold millions of units of multiple generations of Glock firearms that I suspect are targeted by this legislation, and they are in the possession of probably millions of American citizens. So for me, that does reach the level of common, although I do understand the gentleman's remark about whether or not this is an outright ban or it is merely a ban on the certain types of sales. I want to move on to the Bruin question. And I just want to pause for a quick second. If folks are watching this debate and finding it somewhat dry, I am beyond enraged that I'm debating this bill. And I'm kind of furious that I have to do it at 4:30 in the morning based on the extreme arrogance of the majority party in the state and their extremely poor time management. And I really do want to vent and let out my frustration and anger on this bill, but my focus is somehow finding a way to defeat what I think is a terrible, terrible policy. And in my view, the best way to do that is to make a case that can be argued in a courtroom at some future point about how this bill fails numerous constitutional tests. So that is why I'm trying to keep it on these types of somewhat dry but important questions. The Bruin decision that I mentioned earlier is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin from 2022. And basically in Bruin, this built on the Heller decision to also add another impediment to those officials in the federal government and the state government who would ban firearms or create impediments to private gun ownership. And this impediment to them is established very simply that if you're going to pass a gun control law, you have got to be able to show a historic parallel. You have got to be able to show that something happened back in the day that was very similar. And I'm just curious if there is an example that the good chairman might share with me about some similar type of ban, maybe based on some sort of internal trigger mechanism that made our forefathers determine certain firearms should not be able to be sold commercially. Through you.
Senator Winfield.
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I know that there are past acts related to firearms. I don't know if they are exactly on point. I didn't come in with an answer to that question. I respect the question, but I didn't come in with an answer to whether or not I could lay out past actions. I came in with the hope to respond to the bill as it lays, recognizing that I've been down this road before. Senator Sampson and I have done this dance before, recognizing that we might talk about a Supreme Court case. Little levity, Senator Sampson has suggested that the time management at this point in the year is his. So, we could debate who's managing time here. But to get back to being serious, I didn't come in here with all of the potential analogous actions of the past. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I will not take the gentleman up on debating the time management issue. He's just not the appropriate target for my ire. Anyway, I've got great respect for the chairman and his efforts in trying to give me as complete answers as he possibly can. I would suggest, however, that when we're talking about gun control legislation, and we do it year after year in this building, it's almost like a holiday that has to be celebrated in the Judiciary Committee, Gun Day. You would think that the majority, if they were simply concerned about making good public policy, they might have figured it out by now, number one, or they wouldn't keep going back to the well, because there's a purpose for that. And that purpose is not about policy. It's about expressing a direct hostility towards a portion of our population in the state of Connecticut, in my view. It's a way to let certain people know that they're not welcome because of their views or maybe because of how they vote. It's disconcerting, to say the least. But the Bruin decision is something that ought to be in the back of the mind of any person that wants to pass gun control legislation. Certainly, gun control bills are challenged at an inordinate rate compared to other types of public policy. There is a strong expectation that this bill will be challenged in a courtroom. There's a strong expectation that almost every gun control bill is going to be challenged in a courtroom as a direct result of the fact that these bills often are directly challenging the long-standing and commonly held recognition of the value of the Second Amendment of our Bill of Rights. We also have a very strong right to private gun ownership in the state of Connecticut, which is also at stake. But you should be, if you are a gun control advocate, keeping in mind the likelihood of a Supreme Court decision of the past leading to a challenge of your proposal, especially when it not only fails the common use test of Heller, but also the failure to provide a historical parallel that is in Bruin. And I've got a dozen or so questions I could ask on the subject of Bruin, but I think the one that we've already covered is the most important, which is that I don't believe that the majority can show me a historical parallel where some similar situation occurred, where people of the past decided that certain firearms would be held to a different standard because of their trigger mechanism, and therefore found to be inappropriate for commercial sale. So it fails that test, in my view. I alluded to the fact that this is a political bill in my list of concerns as my fourth point out of 5. Every law, in my view, should answer the question, what problem am I solving? This bill does not answer that question. I don't know that there is an actual problem that needs to be solved. As described, the conversion device itself is already illegal to possess. To me, that's the problem solved right there. You don't need to go any further. This bill only really matters if the conversion device is involved, and it's already illegal to possess. We need not go any further. The ATF states that a Glock switch, which is the slang term for the conversion device that's referred to in the bill, is classified as a machine gun already. The ATF and the Department of Justice have also warned that a conversion device alone is considered an illegal machine gun under federal law and cannot be possessed even without a pistol or rifle. So it's already illegal under federal law. So what does this bill add? It doesn't target the criminal with the switch. It doesn't charge the illegal importer of such a thing. It doesn't target people that are going to use this gun, this process to convert firearms illegally, like gang members, it ultimately only targets lawful firearm owners. It targets people that engage in commerce in firearms, gun stores. And of course, they're consumers. And that's why I said that this bill is ultimately political. Can the gentleman tell me how many crimes in Connecticut involved a legally purchased Glock that was later found with a converter through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Through you, Madam President, I don't have that number.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Is there at least one through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I have had a conversation that would indicate to me that, yes, there's the case, there's more than one, but I don't have the number with me, through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I mean, it's hard to follow up with that. Suggesting, yes, that there is anecdotal evidence that there may be more than one. I mean, has anyone been prosecuted for this crime, and can I look it up?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I recognize the frustration of the good senator in asking the question, but certainly we could, if we were going to have much more time than the next, I'm not going to do the math, my brain is fried, but certainly we could make an attempt to look it up and potentially even get that, but again, I do not have that in front of me right now, so I recognize the level of frustration there, but I cannot answer that question because I don't possess the data right now.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm not upset. I understand that my colleague is not clairvoyant. He does not know what I'm going to ask. Through you.
Well, to get to one, my good friend to my left did a little digging on the old supercomputer we now carry in our pockets called our cell phones, and it was an individual who pled guilty just 2 months ago. So that's at least one. But as I said, I've had some conversation, and if I had the data, I would share it with the good senator through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm extremely overjoyed and enlightened to hear that we have evidence of one person who's pled guilty. What did they plead guilty to? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll look. It was unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. That tells us two very important things. One, that this person was a felon already, not your typical law-abiding citizen, probably somebody with a criminal record who probably possessed that firearm illegally. But more important than all of that is the fact that it's already a crime. It's already a crime to convert a semi-automatic firearm to a machine gun or a fully automatic gun. And if they pled guilty to it, that shows us that that process is actually working. And that there's no need for this bill, which criminalizes possessions of perfectly lawful firearms that are simple semi-automatic firearms in common use. The Connecticut Democrats like to take pride in the fact that Connecticut has some of the already strictest firearm laws in the entire country. A person seeking to possess a firearm lawfully has to navigate permits, they have to do background checks, they have to give up fingerprints, there are waiting periods, there are transfer rules whenever one's going to actually purchase a firearm. Connecticut already regulates gun ownership more aggressively than most states, and you have to go through a lot of steps to purchase any kind of firearm. And that matters because the people that are affected by this bill are not the people ignoring the law. They are the people complying with it. The people that are most harmed are average, ordinary, everyday people that are purchasing firearms, maybe Glock handguns, for their own personal use, for their self-defense. But veterans, hunters, sportsmen, instructors, small business owners, manufacturers, you name it, everyday people. I want to talk about gun stores because I think this is like one of the worst parts of this entire bill is the impact on FFLs, federally licensed firearm dealers. We've had recent legislation, including last year, House Bill 7042, which we debated in this circle, probably in the early morning hours, although I don't know if it was quite this late or early, depending on how you look at it. And that bill was also an attack on firearm commerce. And I believe it was designed to send a chilling message to gun stores in the state that they could, in fact, be held liable and lose everything, not just their business, but maybe their personal wealth, simply because they came in contact with a firearm that would be later used in a crime that they had nothing to do with. This bill sends a similar message because gun stores are already regulated. FFLs are already under both state and federal regulation. And they have to deal with a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff to make sure that they get everything right. They have to make sure they dot all of their I's and cross their T's. They cannot be accidentally selling a firearm to a person who is ineligible, etc. Can I ask, is there anything in this bill that suggests that federally licensed firearm dealers are going to receive any guidance on what firearms fall into this category through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you, Madam President. As I read the bill beyond the definitions and descriptions in the bill, no.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Through you, Madam President, is there any entity, the Department of Safety and Public Protection maybe, who will issue a list of which firearms are covered? Through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank you, Madam President. Through you, Madam President. As I read the bill, the only information that one, I guess, would have would be the statute itself, which would be amended by this bill, which would be 53202. But I do not believe, to try to answer Senator Sampson's question as clearly as possible, that that would be the type of list that would make him feel comfortable that one would have the level of clarity he is seeking. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm just trying to digest that because I think while I might not be comfortable with a list like that, I think I'd be a lot more comfortable having a list that comes from the Department of Public Safety than not having it if I was a firearm dealer or a gun store, because I would then follow up with the question to say, would firearm dealers be protected if there was such a list and that they were following it? Because I'm concerned that what can happen? Can a firearm dealer be basically exposed to a felony just for making a good faith mistake? Through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I believe that the way in which this bill is written, they would have to actually have knowledge that what they were doing violated the law. I think the term knowingly is used in all of these sections. Now, clearly, there would be some conversation about whether or not that actually happened. And as we know, establishing knowledge or intent is often difficult. I would also just say, to offer myself yet again, I think Senator Sampson makes a good point, and I suspect it might even show up in one of his amendments that we might get to, which clearly I will reject because it would move this bill back down to the House. But I think he makes a good point about making sure we are clear, and subsequent to this, I think kind of have a sense of how this ultimately ends up. I would be happy to engage in a conversation to see if we could establish the type of clarity he seeks, though I recognize that doesn't, for today, do very much to his concerns. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I appreciate the gentleman's concerns. Unfortunately, this bill is likely to pass out of this chamber and go on to the governor for a signature, and that does not make me feel comfortable that people that are engaging in a lawful activity in the state of Connecticut, operating a gun store, and transacting business in good faith every day, making sure they're not arming criminals, could end up guilty of some kind of felony as a result of this legislation, because as we've stated, it is not clear which firearms fall in the category of convertible pistols. There is no such list. There is nothing in the bill that specifies that a list will be created. I don't know that anyone has asked any firearm dealers in the state whether they actually have the ability to comply with this law. To me, that would be important before moving ahead. What happens when a legally held firearm that fits the category of a convertible pistol breaks and the owner needs to have it repaired? Can they bring it to a federally licensed firearm dealer through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm trying to orient myself in the bill to give it an answer. So if I could have a moment. I've mixed my pages up. I'll hear.
Sure, we can stand at ease while you find your place.
Thank you, Madam President. So in the bill, as it describes what is here, I don't believe there's anything written here that would prevent the fixing of the implement that the individual is allowed to continue to have, as long as they are allowed to continue to have it clearly.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My concern is more about the firearm dealer being in possession of a convertible pistol and transferring it back and forth from the person who owns it. Is there anything in this bill or any other existing statute that would make that a crime to transfer that firearm back and forth through you?
Thank you, Senator Winfield.
As I look at it, it doesn't seem to violate the section of the bills that talks about what you cannot do, which are knowingly advertise, sell, offer, expose for sale. Those are the things that cause the individual to trip over this law should it actually pass. And so I do not see where that transfer for that purpose would be a problem under the bill.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate that clarity and that legislative intent. These are some of the important questions that came up during my visit with my friend who is a gun store owner, and he's very concerned about ever coming in contact with another Glock handgun that is no longer going to be eligible for commercial sale for fear that merely being in possession of one might create a crime. And I'll just point out that one of the things that was pointed out to me by him is that very often people purchase firearms through different means, maybe from a different state or even online on a site like gunbroker.com. And what happens in a transaction like that is that the buyer, who resides in Connecticut, makes the purchase on Gunbroker, but because they can't take possession of the firearm directly, it would be shipped to a FFL in the state of Connecticut. And then that person would go to the FFL and pick it up. And obviously, they'd probably be charged some sort of fee for processing the transaction and the transfer. But that presents a bit of a concern, because what if someone ships a convertible pistol to an FFL in the state of Connecticut? That could happen unbeknownst to them, and they are then in possession of it, and then they have a customer that is looking for this pistol. Would that violate the bill that is in front of us through you, Madam President?
Senator Winfield.
Good morning, Mr. President. I hate to do this. I was trying not to ask a question about the question. So an individual, I want to make sure I'm answering the question that Senator Sampson is attempting to get an answer to. So the individual is selling the gun, but they exist outside of the state. They send it into the state to the FFL, who then would be the holder of the gun until it's picked up by the person who bought it. Is that correct?
Senator Sampson.
Through you, Mr. President, nice to see you up there. And yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm referring to.
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, that is a really good question, and I'm glad my brain isn't so foggy that it did not follow it. Well, let's see. The things that one cannot do is knowingly advertise. That is not that. It cannot knowingly sell. The FFL is not selling it. It was already sold. Offers or exposes for sale any convertible. The FFL itself is not doing the offering or doing the exposition here, because the sale occurred prior to the FFL. So as I read it, I don't actually think that whether intended or not is what the bill would suggest is a forbidden practice. Sorry, Mr. President. At least as it relates to the FFL, through you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I appreciate that answer also very much. I'm going to ask kind of a difficult question, which I don't know what kind of answer I will get, but how confident is my colleague in that response when it comes to the real world? Am I able to walk out of here if this bill passes and tell my friend who owns a gun store that he's not in any trouble simply for coming into contact with a convertible pistol, as long as he's not actively selling it? But he can be party to a transaction that is some other seller and buyer, as long as he is merely acting as the FFL processing the transfer, that he'd be able to repair a firearm that was brought to him, that he might be able to do warranty work on a convertible pistol that was brought to his shop. Those are just some examples. There might be more, but how confident is the good chairman that he would be in the clear under those circumstances? Through you,
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the good senator knows that the law kind of grows up over time, and so whenever we pass a bill, no matter how confident you are, what ultimately will determine what will happen has to do with the way that our laws are tested by our courts, Mr. President, and my level of confidence in my response has to do with reading the bill as it lays currently, and I'm sure at some point someone will run into an issue and perhaps find themselves in a court, and on the response of repair of the implement, I feel relatively secure on that. On the response of the transfer, I feel secure, but I think that might have more of a issue in a court potentially. I would say on almost no law that I'm 100% sure that it will lay as we have intended here. We have seen laws where we clearly expressed intent, and the courts have not agreed with us. Through you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I appreciate the candor in that reply, and I am very, very aware that the letter of the law certainly will take precedent over legislative intent. I've seen it quite a few times, and that's why I'm always concerned when I'm asking questions in this chamber of my colleagues, and they have this, don't worry about it, we've got legislative intent on our side. So I appreciate my colleague being much more straight with me to suggest that he's got his honest opinion, but it will be ultimately interpreted by a courtroom down the road, because that's how this works. It's frustrating very often, actually, especially when it comes to this gun control legislation that we've had since I've been here. I've seen quite a bit of it. And I am constantly faced with people asking me questions about what is an assault weapon, for example, and, well, this is a pistol, but it has a screw-on barrel, and this and that. You know, it really is very hard to say beyond any shadow of a doubt whether or not something is compliant with our laws in the state of Connecticut, because in order to know, they'd have to be tested in a court. And some courtroom will have to decide exactly what the letter of the law means and establish a precedent, which is only as good until someone else decides they want to break that precedent. But generally speaking, as the gentleman said, our laws tend to grow. Based on that, Mr. President, I am an amendment. The clerk is in possession of LCO number 5835. I ask that this amendment be called and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 5835, Senate Amendment A.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very straightforward amendment that goes right to the questions and answers that we were just talking about. This amendment would create a safe harbor for anyone who in good faith possessed a firearm for the purpose of safety, services, employment, or was shipped the firearm unsolicited. Basically, the circumstances where we just described, the case where someone was having their firearm repaired or it was purchased online via gun broker or something like that and sent to the FFL so that it could be picked up by the purchaser. This would create a very simple and straightforward safe harbor to keep the FFL out of trouble, because they are not actively attempting to sell or market the firearm. I move adoption, and I'd ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
The question is on adoption. Will you remark? Senator Winfield.
Yes, Mr. President, just briefly, I rise in objection to the amendment for the reasons stated earlier, having to do with where we are in terms of the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will you remark further? If not, will the machine be open? Mr. Clerk.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment A, Senate Bill 5043. Voting on the amendment. This is not the bill. We're voting on the amendment. Voting on Senate Amendment A, Senate of House Bill number 5043. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Amendment A of House Bill number 5043.
I agree.
the senators voted? If all the senators are voted?
Pretty bad. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, Eric's here someplace.
Have all the senators voted? If all the senators voted, machine will be locked.
Yep.
Mr. Clerk.
Senate Amendment A of House Bill 5043, total number voting 33, total voting yea 11, total voting nay 22, absent not voting 3.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Disappointed, of course, that the amendment did not pass. It looks like it failed on a party line, more or less. And I do certainly respect my colleague and his concern over the fact that this is indeed a House bill, and because it's already passed the House of Representatives, and we are indeed on the very last day of the legislative session, any changes that we would make here would require this bill to go back to the House for another vote before it could be passed into law. For me, while I respect and understand that concern, I don't think that is a worthy argument to discount what I think is potentially passing a law that could create a significant problem and may put a honest broker, a perfectly decent business owner who is doing everything right in accordance with their understanding of the law in a predicament where they may find themselves guilty of a felony and potentially liable for legal fees and compliance issues with remaining in business as a licensed firearm dealer. For me, it's a big deal. And that's why I offered that amendment for clarity's sake. And I'm going to offer a companion amendment based on a similar situation that we touched on briefly, which is a person-to-person transfer. In the state of Connecticut, it is lawful for individuals to transfer a firearm from one person to another. It always has been. The only real difference is that in Connecticut, the majority has added the impediment that the only way to lawfully transfer a firearm in Connecticut is through a licensed firearm dealer, which presents a number of concerns for me from a standpoint of limiting access and the freedom of individuals to engage in commerce, but also the fact is that these firearm dealers are going to charge a fee every time they process such a transfer. But in this particular case, I have another concern, and that is that the restriction on federally licensed firearm dealers actively selling or marketing firearms comes very, very close, in my view, to engaging in the entity handling the sale between the parties. And as a result, I would like to offer another similar amendment to the last one that would provide safe harbor for a federally licensed firearm dealer when they are simply acting as the intermediary in a person-to-person transfer. I don't want any notion that they're simply charging a modest fee for handling the process to be construed as them being engaged in the actual sale. And this amendment is designed to protect against that. So through you, Mr. President, the clerk is in possession of LCO 5777, and I ask that the amendment be called and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize it.
Mr. Clerk?
LCO number 5777, Senate Amendment B.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is, or Mr. President, rather, this is a very straightforward amendment. It would, after the last section of the bill, simply add a new section, Section 501, that would effectively say that the Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection become a federally licensed firearm dealer themselves. This would solve multiple problems. It would certainly solve this problem right here that would allow person-to-person transfers to no longer go through the gun store. They could go through the Department of Public Safety in the state of Connecticut. And that would also allow all other private transfers to do the same, and hopefully without any additional fees, and therefore not impeding the rights of Connecticut residents to exchange firearms without additional costs. I move adoption and I ask for a roll call vote.
Will you remark further? Senator Winfield.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And through you, Mr. President, again, I have to rise in opposition to this amendment for some reasons similar to what I've stated before, and also I'm not sure how well it would work to do this. But again, I offer to the good senator to continue the conversation, work with him. It might be interesting for folks to see us line up at some point on a gun bill, Mr. President. But for now, I rise in opposition. I think it would be really interesting to see that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will you remark further? If not, the machine will be open. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Voting on Senate Amendment B. This is not the bill. We're voting on Senate Amendment B for House Bill number 5043. We're voting on the amendment. This is Senate Amendment B for House Bill number 5043. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment B.
Have all the senators voted? If all the senators voted, the machine will be locked. And then the clerk, please call the tally.
Losing them as they come.
Almost ran out of vote.
Senate Amendment B of House Bill 5043, total number voting 32, total voting yea 11, total voting nay 21, absent not voting 4.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to revisit something that we talked about earlier in this debate because it kind of stuck out to me that it was probably the most important part of our conversation, which is that one of the biggest issues I have with this bill, aside from the fact that I just don't like it as public policy, is that we're not even certain which guns are actually contained in the definition of convertible pistol. And I think that in order for this law to move forward with any kind of effect, frankly, as a law enforcement tool or to be respected by gun stores and the public or manufacturers, I think you need some sort of clarity to determine exactly which firearms are included. So I just wanted to ask through you, Mr. President, if the good chairman could list any known firearms that fall within the category of convertible pistol. Through you.
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I recognize the attempt here to get a clearer answer. I would just say that I don't have a list. I know that states that I think Senator Sampson, one of them, California, that Senator Sampson would probably not really like much of anything from that state, well, maybe the sunshine, do in fact have a clearer list, but often that is not accepted as an answer. So I will just go back to the definition in the bill as providing us with the way to look at this. And while that is not a list of implements, I think, as I suggest, the law grows up, so does the understanding of the law to include a list. And I think the work that I hope that we do together in the future will help with that question as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank the chairman for his answer. And I'm certainly not doing this to be disagreeable, but I think I just ought to, for the sake of argument, just ask on the record whether or not certain firearms do fit the category. For example, are Glock Gen 3 pistols included through you?
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard the beginning and missed the end. If it could be repeated, I would be happy to make an attempt to answer.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I certainly respect the gentleman's prior answer and reserving the right to rely on the definition in the bill. But I just don't feel comfortable going through this debate and not just asking for the record to see what answer I get. Are Glock Generation 3 pistols covered?
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. And through you, Mr. President, as I've suggested, I've handled pistols before, but I don't have the internal knowledge to answer that question just off the top of my head. Through you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
How about Glock Generation 4 pistols? Through you.
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. And through you, Mr. President, the answer to this question will remain that I don't have that knowledge off the top of my head. Through you, Mr. President, but I would be happy to answer for each pistol that is suggested. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
I will just ask two more for the sake of argument. Glock Generation 5 pistols. Are they contained and defined as convertible pistols through you?
Senator Winfield.
Mr. President, thank you. Same answer. Don't have it in front of me and would not venture to go beyond the knowledge that I currently have at hand. Through you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
And as promised, just one more. Glock Generation 6 pistols. Through you.
Senator
Thank
Winfield.
you, Mr. President. Same answer. And as I've suggested before in other gun debates and any debate, I am happy to go with you as far as you would like to go. I think it's as important as you think it is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate the gentleman and his answers. I'm trying to illustrate a point, which is not to say that there are no answers to these questions, but the fact that these answers are not readily available. And I believe that if we're going to pass a law that the people of Connecticut are going to be expected to follow, and that has a serious penalty, this is a felony, folks, if you are not in compliance. And to suggest that we cannot accurately answer whether the so-called Glock Ban bill is going to ban certain Glocks from commercial sale. It's concerning to me. There's also a number of other pistols and handguns that I did not mention that some folks suggest contain a cruciform trigger bar, which we've already been through that conversation. I sincerely doubt most of the people that are supporting this bill could ever identify what a cruciform trigger bar is, let alone draw one, or even tell me whether it's bigger than a bread box. And that's no way to make a law. The people of Connecticut deserve some clarity, and the people that are going to come into contact with firearms in the state deserve to know whether they are in danger of becoming felons based on something as hazy as a cruciform trigger bar, which is a part inside a gun you cannot see, that we had a great deal of difficulty defining whether or not it would differ from firearm to firearm, or whether those differences would make it fall inside or outside the category described in the bill. And we can't even list the firearms that are included. Some folks say the Smith & Wesson SD9 would fall under this category. I don't know. Based on the other answers we got from the chairman, I doubt that he would suggest one way or the other based on his personal knowledge, and I don't blame him. There's also the Ruger RXM. There's the Shadow Systems firearms. There's even a Springfield Echelon, which is a firearm I happen to personally own. I would love to know whether this firearm is on the list. It seems absurd to me, in fact, that you could pass a law like this without any effort to actively inform the public what's banned and what's not. So through you, Mr. President, I'd like to offer another amendment. This one is LCO 5776. The clerk should be in possession of that amendment. I ask that I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO 5776, Senate Amendment C.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a very, very straightforward amendment. Just like I was describing, this would create a section after the last section of the bill, simply requiring that not later than 30 days after the effective date, which would be the passage of this bill, the Commissioner of the Emergency Services and Public Protection shall, within available appropriations, establish a list of convertible pistols. The Commissioner shall post such a list on the DESPP internet website and update each such list monthly. This is the very least that ought to happen to make this bill a little bit better for the people of Connecticut. I move adoption. I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Will you remark further? Senator Winfield.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I have to rise in opposition to this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will you remark further? If not, will the clerk please call the roll? The machine will be open.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Voting on Senate Amendment C, House Bill number 5043. This is an immediate roll call vote in the Senate. We're voting on the amendment. This is Senate Amendment C of House Bill number 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Sun's coming up. All senators voted? If all senators have voted, machine will be locked. Mr. Clerk.
Senate Amendment C, total number voting 31, total voting yea 11, total voting nay 20, absent not voting 5.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That is a bit of a frustrating experience. I certainly recognize the technical obstacle with passing such an amendment and having it go through the other chamber, but I do not, once again, believe that justifies ignoring what is such a much needed addition to the policy that is before us. The fact of the matter is that that list might be the difference between someone being found guilty of a felony who is completely innocent of any actual crime or not. I started this conversation earlier by pointing out its political nature and my frustration with that, and my focus on attempting to try and build a legal case that could be used later to challenge this law. And I have 4 additional amendments to this bill that I'm going to offer in quick succession. I thought about how to do this a little bit, but I think these amendments are extremely important to illustrate what is happening here, which is we are about to pass what I believe is a wholly political bill. It is designed to send a message to lawful gun owners in the state of Connecticut that this majority will continue to pass more and more legislation infringing upon your rights that are guaranteed both by our state and U.S. constitutions, that they are willing to pass bills that are, to the average non-constitutional scholar, still in direct violation of 2 very significant Supreme Court precedents. almost to guarantee with certainty that this particular legislation will not stand up to scrutiny in a courtroom. But unfortunately, until that happens, it will indeed be the law in the state of Connecticut. And people will be charged and tried and possibly prosecuted for crimes under such a law. It would take a legal challenge at some point down the road, which may take years. It may take a decade. It may never come for people to actually have justice. And I compare that with other policies this legislature is passing. Most recently, this legislature passed a bill that would raise the age of juvenile offenders who commit serious crimes, crimes that harm innocent people in the state of Connecticut, to treat them like juveniles all the way to the age of 26. And I understand there's a lot of passionate arguments on both sides of that argument, but I cannot abide the notion that we are, in this legislature, actually concerned with preventing or stopping criminal enterprise. To me, that bill, which I believe passed the House of Representatives today as well, which will probably be headed to the governor for a signature, doesn't do anything to prevent crime. It doesn't do anything to make the people of Connecticut one bit safer. And this bill that is before us doesn't make us one bit safer either. But what it also does is it puts a target on the back of many Connecticut citizens who happen to possess these firearms, to say that they are one step away from potentially being felons for possessing some item that they bought lawfully, have used properly, and have committed no crime. It's really remarkable. I believe that we should have adopted the amendments that I have offered previously that didn't change the policy. I know when I'm beat. I know when the majority has more votes than I do. I know that they're going to get their way at the end of the day. I know they're going to pass this into a law. All I was looking for is some clarity so that when this law does pass, people aren't caught up in it unexpectedly or innocently. I don't want to disparage my comments, but I have to tell you, it's extremely frustrating to watch, to sit here, to be offering ideas for the sake of desperation and clarity on a bill that I cannot stand, but I cannot stop. And the argument is, well, it would be inconvenient for us to actually go back and redo this bill through the House. And I get it. But I think it would be a whole lot more inconvenient to be charged with a felony because you did something accidentally, because you didn't know which list of guns, or whether your gun was on the list of affected firearms. And that's what we're talking about. I simply wanted clarity. And to have my approach, which I think has been as diplomatic as I could possibly be under the circumstances, this is legislation that flies in the face of everything I believe in. I would categorize it as morally wrong. I would classify it as un-American. I would say that it falls in the category of abuse of the citizenry, frankly. I'm trying to keep that to myself as much as possible to make the argument from a legal perspective and not one of passion or personal feelings and views. So I'm going to offer a series of additional amendments, and I already know that they're going to fail, but I'm going to offer them anyway because these particular amendments deserve to be on the record, and the people of Connecticut deserve to know who actually thought that these were good enough ideas to overcome the small inconvenience of possibly delaying the passage of this legislation. The first one actually would simply delay the passage of this bill for less than a year. But it would attempt to try and get the policy right. Mr. President, the clerk is in possession of LCO 5836. I ask that he call this amendment and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize it.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 5836, Senate Amendment D.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment would add, after the last section of the bill, a requirement that the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection review and determine the need for these policy changes. And as part of the review, determining whether these policy changes are necessary, the department must consider documented cases in Connecticut involving lawfully acquired semi-automatic pistols that were later converted and used in crimes. Data on how such pistols were obtained, including by retail sale, private transfer, theft, or trafficking. Identification of conversion devices used, including Glock switches or by other means. Evidence that existing laws were insufficient to prosecute any such case. And identification of specific firearm models involved and whether they fall within the amended provisions of sections 1, 2, or 4 of this act. Estimates of how many of such incidents would be prevented if this policy was passed. And only if after such review is conducted, the department determines, based on the cumulative assessment of those factors, would this go into effect January 1st, 2027. I move adoption, and I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Will you remark further? Senator Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. To you, Mr. President. I rise in objection. Appreciate the effort, the passion, but I've stated the reasons why we should not be doing this now. I disagree that it's morally wrong and un-American. We can all have our opinions on those things, and I think Senator Sampson is free to have that opinion. I will just note in the commentary leading up to this, the juvenile bill came up. That bill passed this chamber but did not pass the building, so we'll probably have that conversation next year along, hopefully, with the conversation Senator Sampson and I will have on some of the issues he's brought up here this morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will you remark further? If not, will the clerk please call the roll? Machine will be open.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate voting on Senate Amendment D of House Bill number 5043. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate voting on Senate Amendment D of House Bill number 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate voting on Senate Amendment D.
Everyone has voted. The machine will be locked. And clerk, please call the results.
Senate Amendment D, House Bill 5043, total number voting 32, total voting yea 10, total voting nay 22, absent not voting 4.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As promised, I have another amendment. This one is LCO 5837. I ask that the clerk call it, and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize it.
Mr. Clerk.
OCO number 5837, Senate Amendment E.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As mentioned throughout this debate, the majority seems to come back to this chamber year after year after year with more gun control legislation, and a lot of the arguments hinge on whether or not this is actually impactful on fighting crime or making people in Connecticut safer. And a frustration I have is that when we start to talk about data, often there isn't any to determine whether or not firearms are being used in crimes, or whether those firearms were lawfully purchased, or whether or not they were trafficked firearms or illegally possessed, or where they came from, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe that we should start tracking that information. The amendment that is before us would create a new section at the end of the bill asking the Connecticut Sentencing Commission, in consultation with the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, to annually compile a report on the occurrence of crimes in the state involving firearms. As part of such report, the Commission and Department shall include the number of charges, such crimes, and the disposition of such charges, trends in firearm violence, percentages of offenders who legally or illegally possess the firearm or firearms associated with each such crime, and the percentage of such crimes that were committed with a firearm or firearms banned in the state. It would require the Commission submit such report annually, not later than January 15th. I believe this information would be crucial in determining whether or not any of these policies, including the one before us, have any merit at all as policy or just politics. I move adoption, and I ask for a roll call vote, and I encourage my colleagues to please support this amendment.
Will you remark further? Will you remark further? If not, will the clerk please call the roll? The machine will be open.
An immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment E. This is not the bill. We're voting on Senate Amendment E, House Bill number 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment E of House Bill number 5043. This is not the bill. This is Senate Amendment E.
I understand we're going to be here for quite a while. I'm up for the duration now. We should have just taken this to midnight. I literally skipped.
Immediate roll call vote in the Senate. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate. Voting on Senate Amendment E, House Bill 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
I noticed, by the way, you did your own effort at that safety thing. So. Which brings my the lower energy right now. It's been a while. Sampson, don't talk on this bill. Do it anyway.
If all the senators voted, the machine should be locked. Will the clerk please call the tally?
Senate Amendment E of House Bill 5043, total number voting 32, total voting yea 11, total voting nay 21, absent not voting 4.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Again, not surprised, but of course disappointed at the failure of these recent amendments, which are all, I think, ideas that under the right set of circumstances, I think we could get the majority even to agree, at least philosophical level, that we ought to have data before acting and making policy. It's unfortunate that that was not considered as part of this process that brought us here to this day, where we are moments away from voting on a bill in the Senate that's already passed the House, which will make it, in effect, the law of the state, unless the governor sees otherwise. But being that it's the governor's bill, I have a strong feeling he will ultimately support it. I don't want to belabor this point much more, but I have been weaving a thread throughout this conversation that we are talking more about politics than policy with this particular proposal, and that it has very little substance when it comes to actually changing what's happening on the street, making anyone safer, solving any crimes. And the fact of the matter is, there is a debate in the state over who's actually interested in doing the job of helping to provide for the public safety. And I would argue that some of the policies being passed by the majority, certainly since I've been in this legislature, tend towards weakening our criminal justice system. And I could write a book, frankly, about the number of things that I've voted against in this chamber and in the House that I think directly undermine law enforcement, undermine the rule of law, and the whole concept of law and order in the state of Connecticut. They make excuses for criminals. They make softer penalties and sentences for criminals, and ultimately make it much more difficult to prosecute people that are truly dangerous. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that there is some benefit in trying to get through, certainly to young people that have chosen the wrong path. I absolutely do. And I don't want that to be mischaracterized in any way. But the fact of the matter is, some folks have committed serious offenses in the state of Connecticut, and many of them involving firearms. And since we're here talking about allegedly the notion of firearm safety, I want to offer two amendments that have to do with criminals using firearms. And the question really is, if we are against people misusing firearms to harm people, to cause mayhem and havoc in our state, should we be prosecuting them? After all, the majority's here presenting us with a bill that they argue is about safety, gun safety. From my point of view, this doesn't do anything to stop a criminal act in any way, shape, or form. Criminals are still going to obtain firearms unlawfully. They are going to, if they so wish, modify those firearms. They're going to use them criminally. They will obtain the criminal Glock switches. They will obtain the scary convertible pistols. They'll obtain whatever they need. And if they don't, they'll probably use some other implement of destruction. That's what criminals do. This bill doesn't solve any of that. This bill has the potential to make law-abiding people who are simply possessing firearms for their own safety and protection potentially guilty of a felony. It has the potential to make a firearm dealer who works hard every day to make sure that the firearms that he sells to people that want to protect their families are being sold without risk of selling one to a criminal or someone who will do harm, and make them potentially a felon through no fault of their own, through a mistake, through the fact that there's no list of firearms that even fall into the category the bill requires. So since we're going to have this question about who is actually concerned about protecting the people of Connecticut from criminals who would use firearms for negative and dangerous purposes, and forgive me for misspeaking occasionally, it is almost 6 a.m. Since we're having this conversation, I believe we should be on the record. So, Mr. President, the clerk is in possession of another amendment. This one is 5779. I ask that he call this amendment, and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
OCO number 5779, Senate Amendment F.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President. I'm sorry I keep doing that.
It's all right.
This amendment is very straightforward. Again, like some of my previous amendments, it simply adds something after the last section. And without getting into every last detail of what is written here, I'll just say that what the purpose of this amendment is to eliminate the eligibility for what is known as the Clean Slate program in the state of Connecticut, which is a program by which we erase the records of people who have committed certain criminal activities. This would eliminate eligibility from the Clean Slate program for any serious firearm offense. In my view, if you're serious about wanting to stop people who use firearms as criminals, then you should want them to be prosecuted for those crimes. And you shouldn't want them to get a pass down the road when they do. This bill, or this amendment, rather, would simply add to the existing bill a provision that those folks who've engaged in serious firearm offenses are not available or eligible for that program. I move adoption, and I'd like a roll call vote.
We remark further. Senator Winfield.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise in opposition to the amendment before the chamber. As we've discussed in many prior conversations, the Clean Slate is not just an opportunity to get out of jail free, if you will. It's an opportunity to recognize, one, for the state to recognize that people are not the same throughout the course of their life, that at a certain point you're no more likely to commit a crime than someone who never committed a crime. And with that, Mr. President, I rise in objection to this amendment.
We remark further. If not, the machine will be open. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment F. This is not the bill. This is Senate Amendment F of House Bill number 5043. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment F. This is not the bill. We're voting on Senate Amendment F of House Bill number 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment F, House Bill number 5043.
all the senators voted? If so, the machine will be locked. Will the clerk please call the tally?
We lost Tony.
Senate Amendment F of House Bill 5043. Total number voted 30, total voting yea 10, total voting nay 20, absent not voting 6.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Following up on that amendment, which I think anyone watching realizes failed on a party line vote, although we seem to be missing a few members. Not sure why that would happen at 6 a.m. after we've been here for the full previous day. But let me just offer one final amendment. This is a similar amendment to the previous one, making a very similar point. This one is LCO 5833. I ask that the clerk please call this amendment, and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 5833, Senate Amendment G.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment, the previous one I had structured so that we would eliminate the eligibility for the Clean Slate program for individuals who had committed serious firearm offenses. This amendment is very similar in that it applies to those who've committed serious firearm offenses and would restrict them from receiving what is known as risk reduction credits, which is a mechanism that would allow folks to take time off of their sentences. I don't know that I need to go to any more detail on the substance of the amendment, because that's really it. It's just a very straightforward eligibility restriction for risk reduction credits, and I move adoption and ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
We remark further. Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in objection to this amendment.
We remark further, Mr. Clerk. Will you please call the roll?
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Vote on Senate Amendment G of House Bill number 5043. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate. We're voting on Senate Amendment G. This is not the bill. This is the amendment House Bill number 5043. An immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment G.
If all the senators voted, if all the senator voters, the machine will be locked. Will the clerk please call a tally?
Senate Amendment G of House Bill 5043. Total number voting 32, total voting yea 11, total voting nay 21, absent not voting 4.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I do not have any more amendments, and frankly, I'm almost out of steam. It's been a long last 24 hours, and a frustrating one, of course, for some of us who serve in the minority. This bill represents a number of things to me. It's a yearly frustration that I face as a Connecticut resident, as a gun owner, and as a Republican in the Connecticut State Senate. It's difficult to keep losing this battle year after year after year. I ran for office mainly because I was concerned about watching my state government head in a direction that I disagreed with on a lot of things, on spending and taxes, on government regulation, and in particular on the passage of laws that infringe on my constitutional rights and my family members and the people that I care about. These rights are super important to me. They are what drive me. They are what make me come up to this Capitol every day and stand up in this chamber and fight for what I believe in. That's why I'm here right now at 6:05 a.m. debating what is probably a pretty inconsequential bill when you get right down to it. At the end of the day, if everything holds true that me and the good chairman of the Judiciary Committee talked about who's affected, who's impacted, and who's not, chances are all that's going to happen is it's going to limit the sale of certain few models of semi-automatic handguns, and the manufacturers will adapt and eliminate that issue altogether. No, it's not good. No, I don't agree with it. But at the end of the day, it's more symbolic than it is anything else, especially if federally licensed firearm dealers can still interact with these firearms for repairs and personal transfers and gun broker deals and all that. If that all can still happen, they just can't sell older models that might fall into this category. It's probably not that much of an impact, at least not on the standpoint of policy. But it has got a huge impact on what it means for this legislature to pass this bill, and the one that was passed last year, and the one that was passed the year before that, and the one that will be passed next year. It is a constant and steady reminder that this state government is openly hostile to the notion that a Connecticut citizen should be able to own and possess a firearm. And the folks in the majority can say, well, we're not really trying to ban all firearms. We're just trying to get at a few certain things. Well, that few certain things comes back every year and year to be a few more certain things. And I don't mind saying, I don't believe you. The moment it becomes politically expedient to ban personal firearm ownership, I think the majority would gladly do it. Maybe not everyone, but some of them. We can't have that in America. Our country is based on simple but super important concepts. And the most important one is that we are free citizens. Free citizens make their own decisions about what they're going to do. They also take responsibility for themselves. And that means not just responsibility for how you're going to pay your bills or how you're going to raise your children, but also how you're going to protect yourself. Ask any police officer, and they will tell you that the odds that they're going to be there at the exact moment that your life is in danger because of some criminal enterprise is not very likely. There's the old saying that says, when minutes count, or when seconds count, the police are just minutes away. And that's no attempt to disparage police officers. They just can't be everywhere. And if you live in a rural part of the state of Connecticut where they don't even have a local police department, you might wait a half an hour or an hour after whatever has happened at your house that has jeopardized or harmed you or your family. Sure, they'll come and write a report, As Americans, we have the right, spelled out in our founding documents. And boy, there's been a lot of fights over those words over the last 250 words, but we still got them. We still have them. And we still have them because there's a few of us that are willing to continue coming back to remind everyone else that those are important words that should not go away. The right to keep and bear arms isn't about hunting. It isn't about the shooting sports. It isn't about a hobby. All those things are important, and Americans should have the freedom to engage in them. What it's about is the notion that as a free American citizen, you have the right to defend yourself and your property. That's what it's about. It's about self-defense, a natural right we all possess. And these bills chip away at it, little by little by little. They are an active attempt to tell people that sell firearms for a living that they are in great jeopardy operating in the state of Connecticut. The law last year that created liability for them, out of control. Frankly, insane. And this is just another notch. We're going to create the potential to put these firearm dealers out of business over what today is a perfectly lawful firearm that you can't really tell even the difference between one generation to the next based on looking at the outside of it. It's sending a message to people in this state that if they are lawful firearm owners and that they value their Second Amendment right, that they are not welcome here. That this state government is openly hostile to them. And that is a terrible, terrible message to send. And I'm going to keep working every day, and I'm going to keep trying to come back here until that changes. Until there is a majority of people that respect the rights of the people of Connecticut. I certainly do. Thank you very much, Mr. President.